I want you to stay tuned because I'm going to give you the exact psychological reason why you keep relapsing and how you can overcome it. But first, I'm going to give you an anecdote about my own experience with addiction and recovery and how I finally broke the cycle of addiction that I was stuck in for 20 years of my life. For 6 of the last 20 years of my active addiction, I knew I had a serious problem and I knew I needed help. I knew that I needed a new life and that I had to get free of my addiction, but I couldn't do it on my own. And because I was doing it on my own for 6 years, trying to get sober, trying to read self-help books, trying stoicism, trying to brute force it through willpower, I kept failing. I kept failing and I kept repeating the addiction cycle. I was stuck in the addiction loop. My experience with why I kept relapsing is because I didn't have my sight on a higher vision. I didn't have a higher goal in mind. And because I didn't have a purpose, when I would get sober during those 6 years of trials of me trying to get sober and failing repeatedly, it's because I always got sober and I tried to rely on my willpower alone. And that was my mistake, was that I thought I could do it on my own. After 20 years of active addiction, it's insane to think that I could do it on my own. That I thought I could do it on my own after all those years of struggling and repeatedly failing. You think I would have learned my lesson and tried something new or tried something different, but I didn't. I would get sober for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time, maybe even 2 months, and then something would trigger me, or I would just be feeling bored. It'd be a nice sunny day, I'd be going for a walk, and I would walk by a tavern or a nice steakhouse, and I would think to myself, it's a nice day, I feel good, and I'm bored. Why don't I go and have a steak, and I could have a pint of ale with it? And that would start me down the path of a binge, because after I had that one drink, I would have another drink, and then 4 or 5 drinks later, I was calling up my buddy to go start a party. And that's how I would spiral out of control. So I can never, I lied to myself about moderating my drinking and that I could control my addiction, but the fact is I couldn't control my addiction. My addiction controlled me. And for 6 years, I didn't want to accept that I needed help outside of myself. So every time I tried to get sober on my own, I would fail and I would relapse because I didn't have a guiding hand to pull me out of my own darkness, and I didn't have a purpose to live for. When I took away the substances and the alcohol, all of the trauma and the pain from my experience in life, my sorrows, my grief, all came up to the surface, and I would feel this while I was sober. Immediately I would reach for the bottle or reach for a substance to numb that emotional pain because I wasn't dealing with it properly. I wasn't handling my emotions properly. I wasn't handling with the stresses of life. And without the drugs and the alcohol, I had nothing to numb myself. I was taking away my self-medication. And that's why I would keep relapsing, because the pain would come up to the surface when I was sober. I didn't have a support network. I was lacking a vision. I was lacking a purpose. So I'm going to tell you the psychological reason why you keep relapsing and why I kept relapsing too for those 6 years of struggling to get sober and then falling back off the wagon and getting back on repeatedly and repeatedly in a cycle of insanity. Then the psychological reason is called hyperbolic discounting. Now, hyperbolic discounting is when we discount the future in exchange for immediate pleasure. What that means is where we see the distant future and we discount the effects or the consequences that gratifying our immediate pleasures will bring upon us. For example, in the moment when Eric Clapton relapsed after, I believe, 15 years of sobriety, his relapse happened because he drove by a bar, he looked at the bar, and he thought to himself, it'd be nice to have a pint of lager. That was his thought process. And he thought that he could have 1 or 2 drinks and handle it and be fine, go home, and take care of himself. But the reality is he went in, got drunk, passed out in the bar, and ended up relapsing into his old pattern or behavior. And he didn't get sober until he finally surrendered himself to God, surrendered himself to a higher power, and admitted that he was powerless and that he needed help outside of himself. And that's how he finally got sober, and he was able to maintain sobriety even when his son died. And that is because of faith. So I'm going to give you 3 keys to help you prevent relapse. The first is delayed gratification. We need to delay our instant gratification. We have to forego instant gratification in exchange for long-term gain. When we look at the psychological concept of hyperbolic discounting, which involves discounting the future for what's immediate in front of us, such as gratifying pleasures of the flesh, drinking, doing drugs, having sex, these are immediate things that we can partake in, desires, instant gratification. And with hyperbolic discounting, we discount the negative consequences and the long-term consequences that these immediate gratifications will bring us. And that's a mistake, because these behaviors destroy us. Long-term, these behaviors hurt us, hurt ourselves, hurt our relationships, hurt our prospects, hurt our careers, it's self-destructive, but in the present, it doesn't seem that way, and we discount those negative effects because we appreciate the immediate, instant gratification. So delaying gratification, if we can delay gratification, then we can gain long-term results, and we can build ourselves a better future by working day by day and foregoing instant gratification for the long-term gain. And this we can do step by step, completing goals, habits, working towards a purpose every day. Purpose brings me to the second key of preventing relapse, and that is having a purpose, or having a long-term vision, or what some may call the North Star vision. It's orienting ourselves to a northern direction, and the northern direction in a compass is the magnetic north. So when we have our magnetic north, it's the direction we're heading in, why we're doing what we're doing, where we want to be in life, where we're going. It doesn't have to be specific. It can be a general distant vision or a general distant goal, what's called a distal goal. When we have that vision, we can create proximal goals, which would be goals in our proximity, things that we can take care of in the immediacy to work towards bringing that distant vision to reality. This will help us forego the instant gratification, and by delaying gratification, we can bring our distant vision to reality. Now, the third key to prevent relapse is to make a pre-commitment. Make a pre-commitment to follow the path of sobriety wherever it takes us, even if it takes us to someplace we may not imagine. Even if we're uncertain of what sobriety is, where sobriety will take us, if our life will be better or worse in sobriety, maybe we might be fearful that life's going to be boring, that we're not going to have the same friends, that we're not going to get entertainment. Whatever the fear is, it's usually unfounded. The fear arises from the unknown, the uncertainty, but the thing is, greatness lies on the other side of uncertainty, and no amount of information will make the uncertain certain. The only way we reduce certainty is through taking action. Whether that action benefits us or hurts us, at least through the action, we learn what we previously did not know. And that is whether what we're doing is right for us or maybe it's wrong for us. Even if we fail, at least we gain a level of certainty whether or not what we are currently doing is working for us. But we have to take that step, and we have to learn through failure. So using failure as a means to success and pre-committing. When we commit to sobriety, we commit to the road of sobriety and say that no matter what, I'm going to stay sober. I want a sober life. I want whatever's on the other side of uncertainty, and I'm going to get there no matter the cost. That's a pre-commitment. Some people may pre-commit to a higher power, to a God, to faith. And me personally, that's what I do. I pre-commit to live a life that is worthy of glorifying God. I want to be a vessel that can glorify God and be worthy of glorifying His name. That's my pre-commitment. That means I have to leave my former manner of life behind. I can't be partaking in pleasures of the flesh. I can't be gratifying my instant desires. I can't be drinking alcohol and binging drugs on the weekend anymore. I can't be watching pornography because I've pre-committed to live a life according to a certain set of ideals or expectations or standards. And that is in accordance with my faith to God that I have today. And I contribute my success and sobriety to God. I wouldn't be here if God didn't bring me out of the darkness that I was in, because I was heading to death's door. I was on death's doorstep. And the fact that I'm here before you today is a testament to God's glory and God's grace, that when we do surrender ourselves, when we lower our pride, we ask for help, God does answer our prayers. He answered mine. Now, I hope this video finds you well. If you like what I say, subscribe and give me a like. Add a comment about your own story if you have a similar story in success, or if you want to talk about a little bit about a struggle that you may be going through right now. And if you want more, check out this video here.